Hi, everyone. I've seen a lot of discussion online over the years, and particularly lately, on how we might improve the format of competitive paintball to make for a more marketable product. And what I wanted to offer today was kind of a game theoretic perspective on how we as an industry might do that. A quick motivation and importance of this is, over the years we've seen reduced participation rates, as shown in the graph below. With a peak around 2006, the ESPN Paintball World Championships, which was awesome to see paintball that popular in a mainstream sense. It's my argument that professional paintball has a kind of halo effect. We're going to derive marketing materials from this. It's what people that Google paintball are going to see. And having that be a compelling product would certainly help participation rates, trickling all the way down to weekend warriors and first-time casuals. I think now is actually an excellent time if you have a live sports property, if you're a league, streaming access. People are looking for content. An example is Netflix recently tried to buy the World Surf League just because live sports of any type are interesting, unique, evergreen content. And another example of how media integration can drive interest is the F1 series on Netflix, Drive to Survive. So the attendance rates at races are up like 50% year over year, owing to the success of that documentary series. And so I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone in terms of improving paintball and, in doing so, improving the marketing materials. I just want to quickly review the popular competitive format we have right now, which is, I would say, X-Ball is the most dominant. It's essentially a symmetric game. So if you've played any multiplayer online games, you'd recognize it as a team deathmatch, essentially. There's some foibles with respect to concessions. But eliminations are the result of positioning, and positioning itself is risky. So there still is a chess with guns aspect, but the strategy is generally pretty simple, and it has a couple of disadvantages from a game theoretic standpoint. In particular, we have a slippery slope dynamic. So once you start losing a game, once you're down on bodies, it generally speaking becomes more difficult to come back in that game or salvage a point. This has to do with there being a high breakout leverage. And it also means that once you're down, there's not something different you can do to try to accomplish an objective. We've also seen over the years that the game has improved through some structural changes in field layouts. There tends to be an incentive to lock down areas, so you can always manufacture a 2-on-1 once you're up on bodies. So generally you're going to roll your gun, use more paint, and suppress movement of the other team and get your guys into position to even just trade out and continue to press your advantage. There are buzzers, but they're generally irrelevant, right? They're subsumed to this team deathmatch, kill 'em all objective. And because it's a team deathmatch, there are high leverage bunkers on the field, the snake being most famously. But there's no real spectator point of focus that things are definitely going to be affected by controlling a certain area of the field. And the combination of incentives also creates somewhat stagnant layouts. So basically every layout you see is symmetrical, and that's required for fair play, being able to stage people on either side, etc. And the bunker leverage drives the movement. So, in early X-Ball, there were always cans in the corners. And because of how high leverage rear corner cans were, you would always have them. You would always have them occupied. They help you bring people up the tape side. And to drive more movement, you tend to see modern fields have smaller or removed back corners. And the reason is to basically increase the incentive to move up to higher leverage bunkers that aren't the cans. And it's in service of making the game more aggressive. I would argue there are better ways to accomplish that same goal. So what we need is a format that's exciting to play and incentivizes movement. And it would also be nice if it highlights diverse strategies. You can do different things on the field, not too complicated, and ideally diverse talents. The fast guy, front player, has a different job to do than a guy with great communication, gunfighting, strategic skills. in the back. And I think that's the case now, but we've seen a little bit more, at the highest level at least, of a positionless game evolve. And of course, we want this to be highly watchable. This ties into it being marketable. And some ways that we could do that is to try to give spatial points of focus, places to look at. And you can imagine watching with your non-paintball playing friend and just how easy is it to explain what are they trying to do beyond shoot other guy. One way to think about that is you want it to be easily understandable, and a way to accomplish that is by having it be analogous to other games, and preferably the most popular games you can find. And that's clear, in America at least, that you want to look at something like American football. It's a great game, and it's insanely popular, and everyone knows the basic outline of what you're trying to do. And the other thing I have here is the most recent iteration of Counter-Strike, which is the most popular esports game. You know, we're fond of complaining that esports is eating a lot of the paintball target market. So the current CS Global Offensive, Counter-Strike, has 37 million monthly players. So even just making your game look like that, I wouldn't go so far as to call it Counter-Strike, but having that have an analogy, I think, could be helpful in driving participation. You know, tell your friend, play for real. Get off the keyboard. But I also think we have to be realistic about what we can do. So it's got to be minimal changes in order for this to actually be adopted by players, fields, etc. So we need minor, if zero would be great, adoption costs, setting up these games, teaching people how to play. You don't want too much in the way of gadgets or tech. You know, I've seen formats where people are carrying a ball up the field, or even it's a surrogate for the Counter-Strike bomb, which gives that game a point of focus at the competitive level. I don't think that's a realistic fit for paintball. Paintball guns are generally a two-handed proposition, and the gear of the game needs no improvement. So what I would like to do is propose a format very similar to what we play now, but with some key changes. And the big change is that you play offense and you play defense. So that's similar to American football, where there's an offense and a defense, and they're specialized. And it's similar to Counter-Strike, where you play a terrorist, counter-terrorist, objective-based game. So this naturally creates asymmetric objectives. There's a team that's going to want to be aggressive. There's a team that's going to want to defend. And both teams get to play both ways, taking turns. This also means that fields no longer have to be symmetric. You can play on a massive variety of fields that put different weights on the objectives. And it also emphasizes different skills or players. So somebody that is a great gunfighter and understands how to lock a field down, understands how dynamically to move, they're going to be a great defender. Some guy who's really, really fast is going to thrive on offense. Don't have to play it that way, but maybe 7 men on a 5-man team. Something like this could be really interesting and inclusive, for that matter. So my argument is the offense should score by objectives primarily, not primarily by getting eliminations. And the way to do this is you put a center flag or buzzer, doesn't matter, and you give this 1 point. And then you also say if any player crosses the enemy's last bunker, the defense's last bunker, the end line, it's 2 points and it ends the game. Ending the game is critical because we're going to time each team. So you give each team 6 minutes is my proposal. I think it's about right based on current X-Ball game lengths. And you go back and forth by innings. But critically, you use your time. So you want to score fast and you want to score points. So the metric of efficiency in the NBA, it's points per possession. In this case, it's essentially points per time. So if you can get that center flag hang really quick, that might actually be better than grinding out a game where you kill everyone on the other team and get 3 points, but you had to run off the full game to do it. So essentially, time becomes a scarce resource. This also lends itself very nicely to overtime rules. You play innings just like in college football or baseball, and it also incentivizes naturally some really cool moves. So if you're in a 3-on-1, right, you don't have to kill all of the 3 guys. If you can kill one and then sneak by to the end line and leave 2 bodies up on the other team, you still scored the 2 points for your team. So you get these suicide squeeze plays that I think would be very exciting to watch. And the last point is I think you need to cap the game time. This helps basically give the defense the advantage. Since they can't score, you have to give them something. They get the clock as this extra defender, right? So if they can stall you out for 2 minutes, then you don't get to score. You've lost your opportunity to score. And there's some advantages to this as well, where it's going to limit the paint usage or cost. You could also add limited paint, but if you look at the numbers, I'm not sure it really makes sense to. I think that's a change that players would resist. People love to roll their guns. And the fact that you're incentivized scoring quickly, I think is already going to drive paint usage down because it's going to drive movement up. That drives eliminations up, which means there's not as many players on the field using paint. And ultimately, that's about limiting cost for the player. So hopefully you have a really fun game to play that doesn't cost you 2 cases a weekend. Since that might be a little abstract, I just wanted to I played with a field layout really quickly, and I'm labeling this offense and defense. You may recognize like a bottom-up, it's kind of a Madden viewpoint. Just some small tweaks to a symmetric field. I moved the center bunkers towards the defense, again, giving them a little advantage, incentivizing movement on offense a little bit more. Don't have to do it. And then where you place the center flag is going to be the first point of emphasis, right? So in this case, it's just over the 50, and it's accessible from the D side. So a team that is going after the flag is going to really want to emphasize getting a player, into these bunkers, winning the Dorito side, really maybe even trying to overload this back player so that he can't suppress this Dorito side. And if you get to this point, right, you basically maybe get a player here or here. You can either try to trade them out and get this, or get it and then get back to the Dorito. There's a lot of strategy that you can do around this side. And then the snake has kind of an opposite strategic value where a player in the snake should be able to get to this bunker. And if there's no defending player, if this player gets shot out, this is a pretty high probability of scoring 2 points. So you can imagine lots of different ways that this plays. And the cool thing is it plays dynamically. So you've got some plan going in, right? But if you lose bodies off the break, you're going to have to adjust. You're going to have to communicate with your team. Bumping back, for example, makes a lot of sense. If you're basically saying, we just need 1 point, we need to salvage 1 point out of this quickly. So I think there's a lot of interesting gameplay dynamics that happen by giving different abilities to score and also really incentivize scoring quickly. This also, I think, lends itself to the webcast at the highest levels really nicely. So because you're offense-defense, you can use the Madden camera angle, again, analogizing to something that's extraordinarily popular and everyone would recognize. People do this a little bit. I think it needs to be a little higher so you get the geometry of the field a little bit more. But where you put the cameras becomes obvious because you need cameras on the objectives, and you could even do replay challenges because of the issue that we're going to run into where was that player hit as he got over the line? Was that player hit as he touched the flag? I think that can be a feature, not a bug. And additionally, you just get better focus, right? Because they're either going for the flag or they're trying to get up bodies, and it's similar. So at worst, it's the same as what we have now. Those end runs, I think, could be very exciting. I also think from a building personalities, building interest standpoint, you get better statistics. Really fast player who can get to the flag almost all the time becomes incredibly valuable. You can even, way back in the day, we would talk about packless run-throughs. This guy's so crazy, he's not even wearing a pack. He's all speed, no brakes. Very interesting if you can get players that are extraordinarily good at getting to the flag almost every point. And finally, you get really diverse fields. So you can imagine fields that are just known to be really hard to score on. You can also imagine fields where that center flag is very easy to get to. Like it's a big problem if you don't score that every time. And I think this could evolve dynamically very nicely. All right, so that's the outline. You do need a couple things, I would argue, to make this work easily. You could certainly do this with clocks on your phone, but a team timer like they use in chess would be very nice. It's about $20. I think you really need probably 2 referees. Maybe you could get away with one who primarily is near the flag and then later moves to the end line, but 2 would be better. But what we really need is people willing to try something different. That's why I'm making a video, so I'm going to try to disseminate this broadly. It'd be best if it was semi-high level players who have a lot of experience, so that you actually see what a competitive team does with a format like this. And then you just need feedback. So I'm making some suggestions they're purely theoretical in nature. Some of this is going to work. Some of this is not going to work. Maybe the whole thing's unworkable, but we're not going to know if we don't try. And I would argue that it's big if true. One of my favorite phrases. So, to that end, if somebody needs me to buy them the chess clock or support an extra ref, please contact me at the Lurk Paintball Facebook. I'm willing to support prototype games in this format. It would be great to have some video of this format, or even just player reactions, to see if people like it, if it can be improved, and if it offers an avenue for paintball to move forward with something a little bit different that's potentially more marketable. And a soft goal would be one format anywhere, not necessarily at a professional level, but I would love to see a tournament tried in this format in the year 2023. So that's all I have. I'm just going to go back to the rules one more time. I will put the link for this slideshow so people can review it, and I would love to hear feedback. Comments are open, and I imagine I'll post this in a number of places as well. So thank you very much for your time. Think about it. I'd love to hear what people think.